Greetings, wonderful friends of the World Wide Web. Welcome to Driving and Dragons, where today we are exploring how you're doing it wrong when it comes to using your favorite books and other media as inspiration for your campaigns. And this video is not just for GMs either. So, all you players, get your notepads ready too. Over on Patreon, I'm up to 4 backers, and I appreciate each and every one of you, both of the free and the paid variety. Be on the lookout for an upcoming topics post and for the first post about plans for the Dodge Dart project. If you haven't backed me on Patreon, please consider doing so. But before you click the link in the description, hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons here on YouTube. That's enough plugs. Let's get on to the gaming advice. Dating all the way back to AD&D, the influence of literary fiction and other media has been ever present on the TTRPG hobby. Cyberpunk references books like Neuromancer and films like Blade Runner in their rulebooks. Traveller pays homage to any number of sci-fi classics, and probably most notably of all, AD&D's 1979 Dungeon Master's Guide featured Appendix N, Inspirational and Educational Reading, a list of 28 authors Gary Gygax credited as the genesis of the very concept of the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game. Unlike many other parts of the original D&D and AD&D games, such as strict timekeeping, gold for XP, races as classes, and asymmetric leveling, Appendix N was never really relegated to the dustbin of history. It was always present, even receiving an update and a reprint in the 5e Player's Handbook as Appendix E. For what it's worth, if you want a concrete example of something 5e did better than AD&D, that's your winner right there. They added some notable authors who Gary had mentioned elsewhere, and most importantly, they moved it to the player's handbook instead of leaving it in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Why is that important? Because it isn't only game masters who should be digging into the kinds of stories that influenced the development of the game. I, as the quintessential forever GM, have a long-standing practice of immersing myself in relevant media ahead of a fresh campaign. When I know my group is switching to Cyberpunk game, Bubblegum Crisis and Blade Runner and the Terminator and RoboCop end up on my screen, and Crash, Neuromancer, Snow Crash, and Altered Carbon come off of my shelf. My 3.5 group recently switched to an Oriental Adventures game, so you can bet your bottom dollar that Journey to the West, Seven Samurai, and other works of Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and other Asiatic fiction ended up in front of me. So that is step 1. Read, watch, listen. Consume the kind of media, both fictional and historic, that will bring you as a game master or as a player into the mindset of a culture or genre. We often talk about a great theme campaign in TTRPGs. These are often successful because they work in reverse. This example is kind of a bad one in modern days because, let's face it, when we hear about a new movie or series dropping in our favorite franchise, more often than not, we sit around and speculate about how Hollyweird is going to ruin it. But try to imagine when Star Wars Episode 1 was about to launch. How easy was a Star Wars themed campaign then, even using a system that doesn't work well for space opera? It was so easy. Why? Because everybody was already rereading Heir to the Empire and binge watching the original trilogy. Every GM and every player was already primed and ready, not just to play a TTRPG, they were excited to be in a galaxy far, far away for 4 to 5 hours on Friday night. Now, for how you're doing it wrong, what are the big mistakes? The first one applies equally to game masters and players, and that is replication instead of revelation. The goal is to be inspired by the thematic threads of our favorite media, not to lift plot lines and craft doppelgangers. You want an example? Here's my tiefling fighter with 2 short swords who is good and spends his life fighting against the negative reputation of his demonic kindred. He has dark skin, white hair, and horns that mark him as a demon spawn, but he also has striking emerald green eyes. He moved into the desert so he could live in peace away from people with his magical pet wolf. Did you name him Crits while you were at it? Did he take a level or two of Druid as well, not only for that all important nature connection as a character, but conveniently because those buff spells are really handy? This is just as much a ripoff as you sitting at the table for a fresh game of Cyberpunk to find out that one of the characters was sent back in time and gathered the party to help stop the time traveling killer robot assassin that wants to kill the mother of the future of the human resistance leader. I'm not saying a wholesale ripoff is always a bad thing. It can add, a little levity to the session, get a few laughs, even get everyone thinking about a good piece of source material. But ripoffs are like joke characters. They have an extremely short shelf life. Your Dritz clone quickly becomes very annoying, and it becomes very unsatisfying to you as a player too, because you have no hand in the development and growth of that character. You have railroaded yourself by painting yourself into a corner. What you want to do, both as a GM and as a player character, is understand the thematic drivers of a story or a character. Lord of the Rings isn't about take the MacGuffin to the mountain, kill the Dark Lord. It is about the struggle of good and evil, backlit by preserving the beauty of the natural world in the face of relentless progress. It's about the corrupting influence of power, even when wielded with the best intentions. It's about hope, loyalty, and facing impossible evils because they must be faced, not because it's something you want to do or for some kind of personal glory. If you go into the design of your campaign or the crafting of your character with these driving themes in mind, you get to have something that has enough of the reflection of the inspiring work for the other players at the table to make that connection and join you in that mindset without triggering the you're an obvious Han Solo clone, or I guess we're trying to stop Thanos from getting the Infinity Stones type reactions. One way that you can do this is a good old fashioned content binge. Watching and reading multiple seminal works that relate back to the style or genre you're looking to emulate makes it easier to recognize these themes by thinking about the similarities of those works. For example, if you watch Blade Runner, The Terminator, and Robocop, all three will ask you what it means to be human. Each will warn you of the dangers of technology, not only as artificial intelligence and cybernetics blurs the line between man and machine, but also as the little creature comforts and improvements of our everyday lives lead us to an increasingly hedonistic and detached lifestyle. You don't need a cyborg super cop, a time traveling assassin robot, or a villain who saw attack ships on fire off of the shoulder of Orion to get that feeling in the guts of your players. You just need to ask yourself how you show them a world where easy access to entertainment and distraction has led to an uncaring population where people are increasingly reliant on technology. Technology that gets closer and closer to human. A human that may not appreciate being treated as a literal subhuman slave. The same can be said for that character that you want to play as a player character. Even if the game is more generic or the game master hasn't given you any real guidance on the direction of the game, a player can still use the elements of a character's theme to make a PC that is inspired, but still unique and exciting to explore on their own. Let's go back to Dritz Do'Urden. What are the themes of Dritz as a character? Luckily, R.A. Salvador isn't a particularly good character writer, so it's kind of right out there in the open. Dritz is an obvious don't judge a book by its cover, nature overcoming nurture, black sheep character with later tones of the heavy price of longevity sprinkled on for good measure. He also suffers a rather heavy handed dose of traditional survivor's guilt because his friends suffer through association and he likes to blame himself for anyone he fails to save or who makes poor decisions after he saves them, whatever the case may be. Largely, the theme of Dritz is one of seeking a place to belong and then jealously defending it. His traditional D&D character development also reflects this, as he leaves his homeland where his only solace was as a fighter to live alone in the wilderness as a barbarian, relying on the only person he could count on to onto his time as a ranger, a literal warrior for nature. He's representing his good nature, warring against the evil nature of the societies around him, be it his drow origin or the societies that reject him because of his drow heritage. There are 1,000 ways to work this into your character simply by focusing your in-game actions and decisions on the idea of seeking your place in the world while giving your character some trait that leads them to be rejected by the world around them. You want a cyberpunk Dritz Do'Urden? Instead of a two-gun wielding guy with purple cyber eyes who ran away from a nomad family of cyber psychos, maybe look at a guy who aspires to be something more, rejecting cyberware and refusing to buy into the world around him that is obsessed with the next brain dance or chem fix, disconnected from the web looking for meaningful human connection. Or make him a corpo kid who rebelled against a life at the top of society built on the backs of the masses to find an honest life. He's rejected by the corpos and by the streets alike, looking for a better way, free from the mindless consumerism and exploitation of the city. Good thing that he can razzle dazzle with his Manus blades, because all he's found so far are gangers willing to kill to steal the same poison that his corpo family sells. Maybe he can reflect on that same all of my friends will die long before me sentiment that Dritz has, not through a centuries-long natural life, but because all those around him die young in the meat grinder rat race that he chooses not to participate in. In the end, what we want is inspiration. We want a world that reflects a story that rhymes, not a carbon copy that repeats. So there you go. If you are not reading, watching, and or listening to the works that inspired the creation of these very games, you're doing it wrong. And if you are, remember that enduring memories are forged from inspiration, not from duplication. That's all I got on this one today. Tell me what I missed or share what inspires you in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.